Good morning, everybody. Yes, welcome to the first workshop on Driver First Assist. Driver First Assist it's a not-for-profit organisation, and it's been created in partnership with the emergency services. We have a single purpose, and that's to provide drivers with the skills to manage themselves at the scene of a road traffic collision, provide life-saving first aid in advance of the arrival of the emergency services. What we do is quite simple. In fact, it's probably simplicity that's our hallmark. What drivers are trained to do in the first instance, should they find them first or early at the scene, is to notify the emergency services with accurate information about the location of the incident. Now that might seem fairly routine and a statement of the blindingly obvious, but it's surprising in this day and age with the advent of mobile phones how many people don't actually know where they are and how difficult it is for the emergency services to actually get accurate locational information. It's very typical when the police ask where you are, when they get into voice contact with you, to get responses like I'm on the M6. Or I'm on my way to Manchester, and which is not very helpful. And so getting accurate information, if nothing else, for the emergency services is absolute gold dust. Also, giving accurate information about the nature of the incident allows them, or enables them, to resource properly. In our training materials we have a video clip which shows a response to an incident that's been reported as two coaches crashing head-on. Now what the emergency services do, they have to respond to whatever information they've been given. So to that incident they sent 3 air ambulances, the SU rescue helicopter pitched up, any number of ambulances, and on arrival they found that one coach had run into the back of the other. Now you can imagine the cost of that deployment, something like about £10,000 just for the helicopters, but of course the opportunity cost of that could have been lives lost because they couldn't be in two places at the same time. So once the emergency services know where the incident is, once they've got accurate information about the nature of the incident, they can deploy quickly to the right place. What's then left for the DFA member to do is to keep people safe, starting with keeping themselves safe, a very important part of the training that we provide, and provide life-saving first aid. This is not about workplace first aid. We're not treating minor injuries. This is all about keeping people alive until the professionals arrive so that they've got a patient to deal with rather than a corpse to remove. The case is compelling. There's no doubt about that. Every day 5 people leave home and don't return. It's a pretty stark statistic, and of course they're entirely random events. Added to that, there are about 500 people injured every day, which for me is it doesn't matter how often I repeat that statistic, it just seems staggering. One of the most common causes of death in a road traffic collision is anoxia, from which you're dead in about 4 minutes. The target time for an ambulance is 8 minutes, so it's not difficult to see why about 55% of people who are killed in RTCs are actually dead before the emergency services arrive. And of course it's not just road collisions that occur on the road network. People take ill, the same as people take ill anywhere. If you go into cardiac arrest on the road network and you're waiting for the emergency services for a response, if an ambulance hits its target time of 8 minutes, you've got about 20% chance of survival. So whichever way you cut it, the way to reduce the number of people that are seriously injured and the number of fatalities is to improve the response by utilising the people that are actually at the scene as opposed to the emergency services themselves. We know traffic congestion is growing all the time. Every forecast says it will get worse and worse and worse. So we know that what that means for target times for ambulances is they'll get longer and longer. So we really don't have a choice. If we want to improve safety on the road network, we have to look at how we can actually play a part ourselves. Another staggering statistic, and that is that if we get sufficient people on the road network with these skills, fairly simple skills, there's an opportunity to reduce fatalities by almost a half. We don't know of any road safety initiative that would dare promise anything like that in terms of improvements. So the training, it's a 7-hour course, it's JOUT approved for driver CPC. It's roughly 50-50 in terms of content between scene management and first aid. It's delivered, the training materials are being produced by the emergency services, and the training is delivered by emergency services personnel. What you get by way of training is exactly the same training that the emergency services personnel get themselves. So in that respect, it doesn't get any better. The training materials are always updated, so it's always at the cutting edge. One of the questions I ask in audiences similar to this, we know the elephant in the room is often, well, what about liability? Could I be sued? And the question is, do we live in a compensation culture? Frequently the answer is yes, we do, but the reality is actually something quite different. This is a graph showing the results of some academic research, which shows that personal injury claims have been in decline for quite some time, but that decline has been mirrored by an almost exponential increase in the way that the media tends to sensationalise events. So we have this notion that we live in a compensation culture which puts people off from providing assistance of all kinds, and sadly it is a myth. In terms of negligence, there have been few cases of people acting in a Good Samaritan capacity have been sued, but there have been enough to tell us exactly what the situation is. And quite frankly, you'd have to be acting in a quite ludicrous and reckless way for anyone to successfully sue you for providing assistance. You may be aware of the Sarah Bill that went past the Parliament last year, one of the shortest bills in history, which set out what the courts should do in protecting people that are provided in, assistance at RTCs and so on. But of course the courts have handled cases in this way, pretty much looking at protecting the person that's providing assistance. And to date, nobody has ever been successfully sued for providing assistance at the scene of an RTC. No community first responder has ever been sued in such circumstances. So you would have to be acting incredibly recklessly not to be protected. Having said that, that doesn't stop you being sued, and so DFA members, as part of the training package, are provided with legal insurance expenses. We talked to the insurance industry at great length about what we do, and they agree with us in our assessment of your current risk profile if you have drivers on the road that have not been trained to give assistance, provide assistance at the scene of an RTC. I mean, most people will try to help if they can. It's human nature. But if you've not been trained, an RTC is a dangerous place to be. You could be putting yourself at risk, or your employees could be at significant risk unless they're clear about what to do. If you're a first aider, yeah, you may have some idea about the right things to do in terms of treating patients. We can't make the place, RTCs, a safe place, but the training we provide can help DFA members to give assistance in the safest possible way. So in terms of making a decision, do we get involved or don't we get involved? Well, if there's a high risk of being sued, and a high likelihood of somebody successfully suing you, then you'd be walking away from this probably before I finish the presentation. But the reality is exactly the opposite. So the risk of being sued, it should not act as a barrier to getting involved. If you then look at the prize, well, on an aggregate basis, reducing fatalities by 46% is not a bad price to win. Reducing congestion is not a bad price either from a logistics industry perspective. And of course, just in fatality reduction alone, reducing the number of lives lost by 46% is worth about 1.5 billion annually to the Treasury. So this is a picture of an incident in London last year. Some of you may have seen it. And this is a first response. Again, thinking about it from a liability perspective, people tend to wade in without giving thought to what is the right way, the wrong way to do things. Underneath the bus was a cyclist. I think it was a unicyclist. I think he was trying to pass the bus on the outside while the bus was turning right. Anyway, it ended up underneath the bus. And what these guys did, they just pushed the bus over to remove the guy from under the bus. So by the time the paramedics did arrive, they did have a patient to deal with rather than a corpse. 3 short anecdotes just to put what we do into context. In terms of knowing what to do when you find yourself first at the scene of an incident, on the M1 about 18 months ago, a gentleman saw someone commit suicide on the M1. Not a pleasant thing to witness. He pulled up on the hard shoulder to go to help without any real consideration for his own safety, walked out into the road, got hit and killed himself. So, the first thing is, can I keep myself safe? It's not about just trying to assist in any circumstances. The M5, a bit closer to home in terms of the context, and this was a driver of a powder tanker driving up the M5 and had a heart attack. And he was being followed by a breakdown vehicle, and he just watched the vehicle weaving. And when the vehicle crashed into the central reservation, the breakdown driver did the right thing in pulling up in the third lane, well back, and put on his hazard beacons to warn oncoming traffic. It's dark, and then it didn't go quite right from there. Had the breakdown guy been a trained DFA member, what he would have done was gone to the vehicle, realised that the driver's ill, called for an ambulance. The ambulance would have arrived. Whether the guy survives the heart attack or not, we don't know. But at least he's got the best chance. Sadly, what happened was that the driver of the vehicle thought it would be better if he crossed over the motorway and onto the hard shoulder. Maybe in his mind was when we're broken down on the motorway, we're going to stand on the other side of the barrier. That's what it tells you to do in the highway code, except of course if you come to a standstill in the third lane. And unfortunately, he collapsed again in the middle of the road and got hit by another truck and killed instantly. So what started off as a minor shunt and a medical emergency turned into a full-blown RTC, and it closed the motorway for 8 hours. So things could have been very, very different, as you can see from that example. And there would have been no requirement for very skillful technical things to have been applied by the DFA member. It was all about knowledge. Similarly, on the M9, you might remember this incident where a car was reported crashed down an embankment again last year, and the emergency services didn't attend to it for 3 days, and that was because somebody had dialed 111 and the police misunderstood the call and listed it as a vehicle that needed to be recovered. Unfortunately, there were 2 injured people inside the car. Now again, had a DFA member attended the scene, they would have gone to look at the car, saw that there were 2 people in it, alerted the emergency services, and it would have been a proper 999 response. Sadly, the driver of the car was dead when the emergency services arrived 3 days later. And the lady that was in the car, she died in hospital subsequently, and probably from dehydration, I guess. So again, that was all about information and not, sophisticated medical techniques. So why get involved? As I said right at the start, we know traffic congestion is going to get worse. We cannot continue to rely on the emergency services for that first response. We don't rely on the emergency services for a first response in the workplace. We have workplace first aiders. So essentially what we've got to do, I think, as an industry, is to train a sample or a representative number of people from our businesses so that collectively we can populate the road network with sufficient people to make that difference. Now, of course, it's not just about saving lives, it's also ensuring that our people that work on the road network are working in a safer environment. But we can also be very selfish about this. If we get things right in terms of the people that are on the road, taking the examples that I've given, we can massively reduce the amount of impact that RTCs have in terms of traffic congestion. Reducing the burden on the national purse by £1.5 billion, again, not a bad prize. And again, back into the context of the trucking industry, a great opportunity to give drivers skills. We're looking to try to recreate Knights of the Road, put some pride back into the lorry driving profession. We're operating in challenging times in terms of driver recruitment. So to be able to send out a clear message that we're trying to make the road network safer, that we're trying to invest in drivers some very useful skills, ought to be attractive. And we have recently gained the full support of the government. We're not quite sure what that means at the moment, but good to have. And we will also be announcing very soon an important development working in partnership with the Road Haulage Association. Okay, thank you very much.